Okay, this is now the 5 Minute Tarot for the 22nd of April 2017, and I think it's going to take a bit more than 5 minutes, but it's going to be worth it if you watch. It's a kind of follow-up to the earlier video from a few days ago about who to blame when things go wrong, and the answer is still yourself, but I think it's worth thinking about what this means and what our approach ought to be if we want to get ahead in any way in life, because it's important to know what's really going on when things go wrong, because things are going to go wrong, and our reaction to it is what will make the difference between improvement or getting more stuck or getting more trapped in a situation that we think isn't of our own making. So some people maintain that we are 100% responsible for what happens in our life. And you might like to think of this idea using an example that I've used it before, and it is, there's bad driving every day. If you drive, you know what it's like. There's always some idiot on the road with you. But most of the time, you let it, you see what's going on, you think, what an idiot. And you don't think that much of it, but we don't pay too much attention to it. So we see it, but we keep it in its place. However, it's when we get really, really annoyed with somebody else's bad driving, that's when we should pay attention to our own reaction and our own response. And this is not just with bad driving. When there's any kind of bad behavior on the part of somebody else, when we get very upset, when we start cursing them, and you know, when you have a reaction like that, that's a warning to ourselves that our own behavior is what needs to be adjusted or balanced or changed. Because if you get really annoyed with somebody not stopping at a red light or stopping at a stop sign, it's telling you that you're not as good a driver as you think you are. So if you focus on improving your own bad driving habits, then you'll drive better, but you also won't be as upset by the bad habits of other people. So this video involves a bit of an explanation of this point from Chris Do. So I need to explain a little bit for those of you who didn't see the particular episode of his channel, The Future. And there's a link below for the YouTube URL. So I've mentioned Chris before at different times. I like his channel and what he's doing there. So a few days ago, I was watching what seems to be a public version of a private group. And Chris was doing a review of a book called The Compound Effect, written by someone called Darren Hardy. So around 12 minutes in, Chris was talking about the idea that in a relationship, if things go wrong, what's our responsibility? Is it 50-50 or 51% us and 49% the other person? But the point is, it's 100% on us. So when things go wrong, our responsibility is 100%. So at this point, 12 and a bit minutes in, one of the viewers, there were a number of people watching at the same time, his name is Jacob, and he had a question or a comment about what Chris had said about 100% responsibility. And so Jacob said, this is not word for word. I couldn't transcribe it. So it's a bit like Jacob said, hold on a minute there. So you're saying we're 100% responsible when things go wrong, but this can mean that we blame ourselves for other things that happened to us that really weren't our own fault and that we couldn't prevent. And there ought to be a clear distinction between things that happen that are in our control and other events that aren't, right? Which is fair enough. It's a good point. So Chris replied by giving the example of, let's say he was driving across an intersection and he was broadsided, or the expression he used was T-boned, right? He was broadsided by another car. So if that kind of thing happens, your reaction can be, you know, you interrupted my life, you ruined everything, you say this to the other driver, you hit me, you weren't paying attention. If you take a reaction like that, this is a lot of negativity. And Chris's point was that if we dwell on the negative part, that's all we're going to do, is have more and more negativity, and that's all we're going to get back, is more negativity. But, said Chris, we could react in a more positive way if we're concerned about the other driver. Are you okay? Are you damaged? Are you hurt? And we probably, if we think they probably didn't mean to drive into us. They were careless, yes, but we've all been careless. So it's probably better to just relax. And he made the point that we can choose to accept the situation, find the positive, and move on with our lives, and try to figure out what to do next, or what to do if it happens again next time. There's going to be a better reaction. Okay, that's the basic point that was made by Jacob and what Chris was saying. Then later I was reading some of the comments, and one near the top, as I read it, was from somebody who had been in an abusive relationship. But this idea of being 100% responsible helped him get out of it, right? And so they were very thankful and grateful that they had been given the idea of 100% responsibility, and it had allowed them to save themselves from a difficult situation. Because when you think you're a victim, then you're a victim. But if you can accept that there's something else going on, it can provide a way out of a difficult situation. However, it's easy to think that the statement of being 100% responsible isn't valid. Because if I'm supposed to be 100% responsible for, let's say, some sickness or bad thing that happens to us, why would I ask for problems? Or why would starving children who exist in the world ask in some way to be starved to death? Or how are they responsible for maltreatment in an orphanage in Romania or wherever it happens to be? And that can be people's objections to the idea of responsibility. So the problem is, I think that people have preconceived and mistaken ideas about what the word responsibility really means, and what sort of sense it makes in the statement that we're considering about being 100% responsible. So we're responsible for what happens to us, but this is not to say that the 3-year-old goes up to the pedophile uncle and says, please abuse me, I deserve it. Or that the young woman in a bar goes up to a total stranger and says, please put a drug in my drink, right, and abuse me because it's okay, I'm not going to remember anything, so you're going to be safe. That's not what we're dealing with here. So that's not what being 100% responsible is about or is dealing with. So I think I'm a big fan of etymology. So I think if we want to be clear about what we think and say, then the etymology can help us understand. So an example I gave a while ago was the verb create. It doesn't mean to produce something out of nothing. It means the root, the origin of the word create means to bring into focus, which is, I think, really interesting. That what you produce was already there in some way, but we need to bring it into focus. So I looked up the word responsible and responsibility, and it comes from a root that means to perform a rite, an R-I-T-E, not R-I-G-H-T, to perform a rite. And so it means to engage oneself by a ritual act. So being responsible means you're making a promise, right? In this case, to yourself. So accepting you're 100% responsible is you making a promise to yourself about how you're going to deal with things. So it's not about stopping bad things happening in the world or stopping bad things. It is ultimately about stopping bad things happening to you, but that's what you're dealing with. So it's more like if something bad or undesirable or terrible happens, what are you going to do? How are you going to react to it? How are you going to respond? And if you say to yourself, I didn't know any better, but I will next time, you're taking responsibility and you're going to improve the situation. Or maybe you think to yourself, driving across the intersection, let's say, I could have known better. I could have looked. I could have paid more attention. I could have done better. I should have known better. Or maybe you realize that you did know better, but you ignored yourself. But you think, I won't do that again. You know, you could have had a sense crossing the intersection. I should look, but do it next time. And you get hit. So you ignored your own instinct, your own sense, but you say to yourself, I'm not going to do that again. So if you take that position, then you put yourself in a position of, generally speaking, you know more, right? You're looking around, you know more, you're more observant, you make connections, you're more aware and alert, generally speaking, with everything. So you recognize possible consequences, and so you steer clear of difficulties that you might otherwise have slipped into. So everything that you do and everything you think is somewhat better, or maybe it's a lot better. It depends on what the actual condition is. But your life improves in quality, if not in quantity. So that it is of great value, and that's the important word. There's value in deciding you're going to act this way. You're going to accept responsibility. By contrast, there is no value in blaming other people. It's not going to bring about improvement, because you still see the cause of the problem as being out there, or else it's in somebody else's power, or it's fate and there's nothing you can do about it, or it's the gods who want to punish you, or it's the devil who wants to seduce you. That's what your thinking is. And while you take that position or put yourself in that position, then you're giving away control. And you don't need to. And that's the point. You don't need to. Okay, whereas recognizing or deciding that you're 100% responsible means you're promising yourself something, and that's good. And it's a more healthy, productive, beneficial way of living and thinking. And good things will come to you because of your way of thinking. One last point that occurred to me: if when things go wrong, let's say something goes wrong, if you're 100% responsible, so is the other person. It's not like you're 100% and they're zero. They also, because they're people, they're 100% responsible too. So when you realize that, it changes how you see the other person and what you can reasonably expect of them. We should have standards, and we should have high standards for other people as well. You can't force them to be free. You can't turn them into whoever you want to turn them into, but we can start off with high standards for ourselves and other people. And the thing is, if you expect other people to do well and to perform and to behave well, they will, or there's a better chance of it actually happening, and that leads to a general improvement in the conditions of your life as well. Okay, that was a long 5 minutes. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.